Yo, what's going on? Your man Jay Blaze, Aki Daddy Dialogue, the podcast. Excited to have a very special guest on this episode. Last time we were sitting inside a barbershop in Hollywood, Florida, and today I am with an author who I've been watching for a little while. His name is Michael Woodward. Did I say that correctly, Michael?
You did.
I did.
Thank you, sir.
Michael, can't front. I am excited to have you here. It has been a long-standing. I remember, I'll tell you what happened. I was online. I think I was watching TikTok or IG. I'm not sure. And I saw a video, and I'm jumping the gun because I wanted my hair stick up when I say this. I mean it, no cap, just being 100% honest. I saw you speak into this little girl's life, like literally look at me. You grabbed the finger and you said, look at me as I tell you this because I want to affirm to you your identity. And that video did it for me. I was like, who the heck is this guy? He's not just talking about books. He's really doing something beyond just trying to sell me a book that's cool for kids. And so I did a little homework and I was like, man, God, if I could open an opportunity to get this guy to interview him. And so I was like, I'm just going to wait. And then when the right time came, I was like, Michael, I'm going to hit him up. This man is forever either reading out loud at some local library or some kind of event or some brunch. He always has something going on, which is really cool. Plus, he's a professor at Barry. And I wanted to start from the beginning. I'll tell you what happened to me that got me the reason why I'm doing this interview and why I think it's really pivotal for our podcast and the people that listen to what we do. A couple years ago, I was doing a radio show, a morning show in Houston, Texas. And it was the first time that I was doing a morning show. And the lead person on the show was a strong black woman who is now my best friend for many years. Her name is Yana Mack. She lives in Houston, Texas. And we had this conversation one day. I have a son. He's 9 years old, about to be 10. He's my wife is might be a little darker than your wife. So he's like café
Like
con leche.
chocolate.
Yeah, he's like café con leche, sort of like you, like in the mix. And so some people say high yellow or high red or whatever. And so I remember us having a break on the air. We did a morning show from 6 to 10. And she tells me, hey, Manny, I know you're in Texas. I've been in Miami all my life. I was newly in Texas and Houston. And she said, Manny, I used to think like when I started talking to her, I used to think she's a little racist. Like, why does she always talk about like why is there always this conversation or this annotation of like being educated, being black? And not because I felt different, but I just wasn't hearing that around my circles. And so she told me something that was profound that impacted my life to today. And it's been 5-6 years. She said, Manny, you think the world sees your son as a Hispanic kid, but in reality, they see him as another black child. Like they categorize, they don't say that he's white or Hispanic. They say he's black. And so it impacted me because I was like, for the moment, I was like, wait up, what do you mean? And so I really started to think about that, how the world would perceive my son if I wasn't intervening and making sure I knew or I was planting a foundation of what his identity was. And so that started this sort of jigsaw puzzle of figuring out, okay, my life is I'm going to focus a lot of my life, although I was doing a radio show. 5 years ago, I started this podcast, and all it was just recordings so my son could hear me speak to him when I was going through something. And so for those that don't know, and we spoke about this a couple minutes before you jumped on, is I lost a kidney. I got a kidney transplant. But I knew in reality that one day I might lose it. I might not be here, but I knew that the only gift God gave me was to have a voice. And I said, I'm just going to record a couple recordings so the day I'm not here, he could listen to them.
Absolutely.
And be like, yo, that's what Daddy said about what he was going through. And that's evolved into something else. It's evolved into parents saying, can you talk about this? Can we speak about this? Then literature and school started coming up. And then conversations that weren't the most sexiest, but I knew kids needed to hear, started to come up. And so literature became a thing that I started to come across because I started to realize, Michael, and this is crazy because if you're not looking for it, you won't really pay attention, especially being Latino here in Miami all my life, is that a lot of stuff, a lot of books, and I remember listening to this TED Talk where this black author was saying the percentages of books made for white kids compared to black and Latino. The numbers are staggering. I mean, it's changed in the last couple of years, but because now more black authors are coming out, and then you're doing things like Inspire. We'll talk about that too because I'm excited about that part too, the workshops. But let me get to the point. I want to know the transition because I first of all, you're doing a lot, and I feel like you went to school, you knew you were going to be a teacher, but there was a transition in your life, Michael, where you were like, all right, I got to do more than just be a teacher. And so I want to understand what that transition was like. Was it a couple of years that it sort of took to bubble up and finally come to manifestation? Or how did that process go from being a teacher into an author?
Wow, there's it's so much to unpack. First and foremost, Jay Blaze, it's nothing short of a privilege to be here. To have this moment, to be able to share my story, to affirm a number of the things that you saw on social media, which drew you to even reaching out. It means so much to me. It lets me know that the late nights in the garage, they do pay off, and that there's always somebody watching, even if your views are in the double digits and not the triple digits, or you haven't gotten 1,000 or 20,000 views.
It's okay, man.
It reminds us that it only takes one.
Yep.
It only takes one person to see something to help amplify and support and affirm what we're doing, Jay Blaze. So no matter how much of this is about the inspiration or my books or my story, it all boils down to a thank you.
Yes, sir.
So I appreciate that. When I think of my humble beginnings, I mean, you brought up so much. You started talking about colorism.
Yeah, I was.
Man.
It's all hitting me at one. And so
I understand.
I try to make sure when I wrote these notes, it could have just been a lot of jargon, and so I had to bring it, condense it back in because I'm all over the place. But I get passionate because I truly care about what you're doing, there's very few people affirming children now. And YouTube is doing that job, and other things are doing that job. And so when you find someone, especially locally, because I was eventually going to interview an author in Philadelphia. But I was like, yo, why not home team? And when I found you, I was like, this dude gotta be.
Man, it means so much to me. But there's a sense of authenticity that exists when you are able to meet face to face, and we're able to have these unhinged conversations that speak to the vulnerability of our thoughts and our beliefs and our foundational core values. And for me, and within our household, identity is key. You must understand who you are and where you come from to better be able to hold on and understand of the greatness that's to come. And I think there's so many of us, myself included, who navigate life lost in a sense, still trying to understand your family tree, still trying to understand your core values of your own, and kind of finding moments of tension between you questioning your faith, or those late nights in the garage, or those late nights away from your partner or your children. And that's where we draw the line in the sand with inspiration, because when I'm just constantly confronted by children who just want the answer, just want to know that a greater good exists and that their identity is something that should be affirmed and championed, yet sometimes it's few and far in between. So I never hesitate to pass up on the opportunity to whisper in a child's ear, hey, you're a lot greater than the world may tell you from time to time. And I tell them, sometimes the world may forget, depending on the age. I try not to lean in too heavy, but depending on the age, I'll tell them like, hey, you've got to remind yourself each and every day just how incredible and how this sense of royal and this regal essence is something that's embedded within them. And for many children, they never heard that. And parents pull me to the side and they say, nobody's ever spoken to my child like that. Here's $20 for your troubles, Michael. And I'm like, wait, hold up now. This is just conversations that need to be had. But it's I gotta support some mouths and feet too. So I'll take that $20. I'll definitely take that $20. But yeah, what brought me to teaching, I can't say it was a part of the plan. My father is a teacher, and thankfully I'm privileged to have a father in my life. And I used to clown him. Yo, why are we waiting after school? Like, why do you put all this into these kids? And you really like this job, I see. And it all begun to make sense. My freshman, sophomore year at Florida A&M, I was community service chair in the fraternity, and we all were in school of business. Primarily, we all were either architects or business majors, or a few of us were in journalism or nursing. But the point is, I saw $100,000 in my mind. I saw the big four accounting, the big banks. And then I ran into accounting class and I said, nah, this ain't really for me. Like, no, I don't know about this. But short story long, I really started to get a grasp on the absence of fathers within the home, the absence of the importance of knowledge, educational, and this thing called equity. I started to realize that no matter the zip code in the state of Florida or whether I was living in Atlanta, that there were these same inconsistencies within the household. and within education. So thankfully, I lucked up on a beautiful internship, which opened so many doors, and it allowed me to meet so many different people who changed my life.
You're 13 books in. New book just dropped a couple days ago, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You can pre-order or you can go cop it. And it's on the website. We'll give you all that. I'll put it on the video on the bottom or the comment section. You can see some of them here. So to transition, how was the transition to writing books? Because I'll be honest, the way that I've understood, it's not the sexiest job to be an author. It's just not, especially in the kid genre. But understanding, like, you make it cool. And I'll be honest, man.
Appreciate that.
One of the things you did, which makes me laugh, is just like, yo, I should do this joint too. Like how he speaks to these children. And you were like, yo, I remember there's a video that I saw. I think I saw it today again. And you were affirming to a young man, like, you know, you're a king, right? Like you kept telling him, like, it doesn't seem like you're sure, but I'm gonna reaffirm to you again and again.
Get down yourself, player.
And I say this, Michael, because you can fake it, man, but that's in you. Like when you do it, the conviction of when you're speaking to these children is man, say what you want. Like there's just a lot of fake stuff going on. Right. And so when you see authenticity, you're like, all right, this is dope. Like I really gotta support or do what I can so more people hear what's happening here. And so understanding that part, you transition into writing books. It seems like you drop more than one book a year, right?
Yeah, man, we dropping them like mixtapes.
Yeah,
we got to, man.
You're going hard in the paint with the book game.
We got to, and you know, it's something I'm trying to get better at. I'm constantly evolving, and you know, I listen to some very important women in my life, some very, very important women that tell me, you know, you need to take a moment, and why don't you share with the world who would you spend so much time creating, as opposed to just moving on to the next one. And that's really tough for me. Mm-hmm. You know, I know one day that fire will catch and they'll all pick up one after the other. However, there's so many ideas and stories and so many of our experiences. And it's one of my favorite pastimes when I talk to children and adults who read my very first novel, King Monte, and they say, this is my story. This is my child's story. Mm-hmm. This is the story of a scholar in South Florida. And I tell them, yeah, it's not about me. It's not about like what it is that I've seen and experienced firsthand. But for many of the stories I like to tell, they're of that child who probably won't go down that path of writing. You know, they may go down a different style of expressing themselves, their art or their story. But for many of us in low-income communities, a lot of our experiences fall on deaf ears. And they don't make it past the drive home or the conversation at the dinner table.
There's just so much complexity to this conversation, and I'm trying to make sure I stay in lane and we don't go all over because I could talk for days here.
Sorry, me too.
The representation, and it's something that I know we sort of touched over the top. The lack of, I'm guessing, because you did say this earlier, you saw like a lack of representation when it came to Black and Latino or Black and brown kids. Do you still think that is out there like that? Is it getting better from the couple? You know, you've been writing books for a couple years now. Do you think the gap is starting to close? Is it better, or is there still the gap is tremendously big when we talk about books that represent and that look like? Because this is something that, and I would love to hear your opinion on it. Something that got my attention was I heard this other conversation or the study where this gentleman was saying that a lot of Black and Latino kids don't really want to read old history. They want to see a representation of who and what they're dealing with now in the present. And so, like, you do that in a way with some of the books you have that you've already written. Do you still think there's a huge gap when it comes to representation of Black and brown kids when it comes to children's books?
Absolutely. I think there have been incredible strives for, especially with the introduction of print-on-demand companies. It's a lot less. It's a lot less enduring. Okay. It's still nice to get the big publishing houses on your side, to develop a team to help you find someone to get you across the finish line. But we're in a day and age where I don't have to sell my ideas to someone who I think will believe in the story I have to tell. For a lot of people, at the end of the day, hey, it's a business. You know, if we're going to invest all this money into artwork, marketing, and all these different things that go along with it, we need to make sure this sells. I totally get it. However, for a child who's roaming the library, who didn't spend a dime on their library card, they're just looking for themselves in between pages on library shelves. And what brought me to this moment, because, you know, we're less than 5 years in, I still find I don't say struggle. I still find this moment of surreal. When people talk to me like, oh, you this author, you got this and you got that. And to be honest, every day it's just another grammar error or another opportunity to evolve and get better and reflect. I like to keep all my own thoughts in my head, but I know that won't make me better. And in order for the next 13 to be even better than the first 13, it's going to take some hard conversations with myself in my village, and it takes a great depth of vulnerability and really understanding the market and really doing a research analysis on people within your lane. Prices, they're going to change. Kind of keep them the same, but what about content? What about delivery, cadence, tone, just the pattern of syllables that you can put and fit into sentences? With me, it's understanding that it wasn't that my children couldn't read. My children, my third graders and my fifth graders. It wasn't that they couldn't read. They just never wanted to read. I couldn't. I definitely, off of $36,000 contract a year as a Clark County school teacher, couldn't afford to buy every book in my classroom, but I could afford the luxury of walking my classes down to the library, just building relationships and saying, all right, let's pick out a book. Well, after the first couple of weeks, come Halloween, my students, all my black and brown students, they've read all the Roberto Clemente and all the Frederick Douglass that they can read. And these are beautiful stories.
Yeah, but they need something
But they
else.
need to see the big five within reading. They need to understand that antagonists do exist and temptation is around every bend in every corner. Well, if the story doesn't quite reflect their experiences, their single parent homes or being raised by grandma or granddad, then they're going to have a tough time staying invested in that story. And in third grade, when they make that jump from a 750 word picture book to a 30,000 word novel, that's very tough for many. It was tough for myself. I think of The Giver. I think of The Great Gatsby. I think of all these books that have stood the test of time that have yet to be banned.
Yeah.
But I think of the struggle that I had because I didn't see myself within those pages. So if we can at least tear down that wall of inclusivity for our black and brown children, it is my belief we can do things such as counter this 10-point deficit that the National Center of Educational Statistics has reported on third and fifth graders in terms of math and reading. These things are occurring not because of the inaction of what I believe is non-existent, but simply put, because things don't exist for students to take action and really kind of bury themselves in. So I can go on and on.
Yeah. Wait, and so, because you're about to lead me to something. We're about to start talking about the school system. Let me stay on par.
Man.
Something I noticed you do, Michael, that I applaud a lot, man, and I said it before, is kings and queens. Where did that come from? Is that just something your parents did
that's
with
Mansa
you?
Musa. That's Mansa Musa. Because I heard Michael B. Jordan is going to fill that role out here, and they will finally tell our story. The story of the greatest and the richest king to ever walk this world. He when he went on his pilgrimage to Mecca and he walked through Egypt and he walked through so many places in northern Africa, he offset the economy because he was giving away too much gold. And I know adults with cognitive dissonance who won't believe that story. So if I have the opportunity to sow that seed within a child and have them develop their own sense of belief, self-worth, resiliency, grit, that's the new job interview hot buzzword. If they have that grit within their mind initially, then I know that later on down in the world, in life, they will have that much more autonomy to rebel. And I pray that my oldest son is listening to this, because I dropped the ball and he was just trying to move so fast, hang out with his friends. 4th of July, I wanted to ask him, tell me what's so special about this day, sir? What is this holiday about, young man? And, he would have took the bait. Oh, it's the 4th of July, baby. It's Independence Day. And I want to ask, in 1776, were we free? Like, are we celebrating our Independence Day, sir?
Where did I get myself caught in? Listen, we got to stay on par. You're throwing me off. We got to have another conversation. All right, listen, we just spoke about your children, and it's something that I always ask guests on the show. How have your kids inspired you the last 5 years when it comes to these books? Do you write the books on the season you're going with them, or is it just how much do they influence your writing when it comes to writing these books?
Man, I'm afraid of my kids. Oh man, they
are they reflective on some of your stuff?
They're very tough. They're very critical. And the youngest,
they're your best critics.
The youngest, I don't know if he's telling the truth or not. Everything that I say, like, we should do, he's like, boring, not doing it. I mean, like, bruh, like, if anybody else said it was the coolest thing in the world, he'd go for it. But when I say it, it's like, man, they're like, nah, bruh. No. You know, so it's finding that happy medium, and it's tough. Sometimes, you know, I won't want to share a book until it's done with them. But even that moment alone is still like, well, how did they feel about it? What were their thoughts? Did you make it to the end? You know, these are the things that are in my mind because it's bias. And I think that's the hardest part about creating art. Because, you know, we all artists, we all sensitive, da-da-da. We're all up to the sun, comes up in the morning, so we have this sense of pride within our work. But with me, it's not so much about my greatest self within literature. It's about having a child discover their greatest self. And I don't think there are many things that are out there reflecting children in a way that is, I don't want to draw this line between appropriate and inappropriate.
No, but you got to define it.
You know what I'm saying? For the developmental, the cognitive awareness and the understanding that, hey, you are incredible and you are a king and a queen. But for so many, you get stuck in princes and princesses and being the fool of the conversation to make people laugh at you, to find comfort. And I like cracking a joke as well, but I'd rather close my mouth and listen to someone who's just a little bit more knowledgeable than I am, so I don't make the same mistakes that they made.
Come on now. All right, listen, guys, if you haven't checked out the newsletter, it dropped this week. The community of dads is growing, and you can be a part of that community. The link is always on the bio. You can hear about all the different interviews we got here, like Michael's interview. This is part 1, plus the interviews we did last week where we talked about honoring your wife and some great things for parents and summer tips as we're doing a summer series. This is part 1 of Michael Woodward right here on the Daddy Dialogue podcast.